Dr. Hong, thanks for coming for the interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
I wanted to ask you, can you explain to our audience what is land readjustment?
Um, Land readjustment is actually a very simple idea. In a nutshell, this is approach for encouraging landowners to pull the land together for comprehensive redevelopment. When land parcels are assembled into a single large site, it's much easier to do comprehensive redevelopment that will allow the planners to make space for public use, such as a park or other public facilities. And also, most importantly, through land readjustment, land space can be reserved for sales, and the revenue can be used to cover the costs of infrastructure development. And that is a big plus over the other conventional approach of doing urban redevelopment. Now, land readjustment is actually a win-win approach for the government because of the voluntary pooling of land sites. The government will not have to use compulsory purchase or eminent domain to acquire land. That method has been proven politically, socially, and economically costly. For the communities, of course, when land readjustment upgrade the entire neighborhood in terms of putting public infrastructures, standard of living of the residents will increase. And of course, they will enjoy more public space, perhaps a garden for the neighborhood, or better school, or fire station, and what have you. For the landowners, it's also a win case because with land being better served, land value will increase. Thereby, the net worth of the real assets will also rise. For the developer, it's also a good thing because now they are able to get land for profit-making operation. For most developer, getting land or developable land for development is the most difficult part of the entire operation. So land readjustment are normally considered as a win-win scenario for doing urban redevelopment, suburbanization, and also other purposes.
We know that in developing countries, they are facing with a lot of problems because of the rapid urbanization. Why do you think that land readjustment is relevant to solving those problems?
There's several reasons. First and foremost is finance. In most developing countries, local governments are in cash crunches or physical crunches. They don't have the financial resources to acquire land and then serve the land and then put in public infrastructures. So land readjustment could be a way to lower the costs of land development for some developing countries because, as I pointed out earlier, the government will not need to acquire land. The acquisition costs in most cases are very high, and by swapping land instead of acquiring land or forcefully, that upfront cost can be totally reduced. This is first. And second is land readjustment could be an interesting approach for developing countries because in most cases, institutional support for any kinds of public work does not exist. Right? So land readjustment, the way we see it, as I will explain later, the way we see it is a mechanism through which the communities can be not educated, but can be sort of trained to involve in policy decision in a way that will be more open and inclusive. So I think in most developing country, this approach will be beneficial for not only from a technical viewpoint, but also for an institutional and governance building viewpoint.
Looking forward,
Mhm.
how do you think we can help with the developed countries to pilot or scale up this approach?
Well, this is a very good question. Let's think back the evolutions of the idea of land readjustment, and that historical trajectory has taught us a lot about this idea. Now let me start off with what the first time I learned about this land readjustment concept. Actually, it was when I was in graduate school, and at that time, people thought of land readjustment as simply a mechanism or a tool to assemble land. That's about all. They want to put two or three, four parts of land together for redevelopment, and that's the end of the operation. And then it slowly evolved into an instrument for financing public infrastructure, getting a bit more sophisticated. Because once you assemble land, when you subdivided the land into more regular shape and increase the density, there will be more land space for other users or even for sale or turn to cash to cover the cost of infrastructure. So the instrument evolved into a much more sophisticated way to not only assemble land, but financing public infrastructures. Now that approach, I would call it technical approach, has not been sufficient. Why? Because they rely on very sophisticated technical know-how to do that. So developing countries normally depend on experts from the World Bank, UN Habitat, or other academic institutions to help them with the project. They are the local indigenous experts are not building their own capacity enough to sustain this kind of operation without the assistance from outside. So by focusing on both the technical aspect of assembling land and financing, my argument is that it's not enough. It's not enough to make the tool sustainable in the long run and can be scaled up to the entire country where the country adopts this method. So my argument is somewhat unconventional for pushing land readjustment into the future is to focus it as not just simply a technical tool for assembling land or financing infrastructure, but as a process through which local governance, local capacities can be built or nurtured in a way that local experts, local communities can actually engage in doing land development themselves. And that is the most sustainable and most responsible way of helping the country to develop land and neighborhood in the long run. So my argument in the course that we put together is to look at land readjustment from a governance building perspective. On the top of knowing all the technique, how to assemble land, calculate land value before and after land readjustment, we also have to focus on how to engage different stakeholders in a very open and inclusive way. Thereby, they feel a sense of ownership of the project, and they will be eager to learn all the details and technique and come up with indigenous way that fit their own context to perfect the method in a way that can carry on to assembled land to rebuild old neighborhood or convert rural land into urban use. So again, one more time, I think a more governance-centered approach of land readjustment, I would think personally, would be the best way to push the agenda forward into the future.
What do you think would be the critical challenges for the developing countries to adopt this governance-centered land readjustment approach?
Land readjustment, if you're not looking at the technical perspective, it speaks loudly to the weakness of humankind, and that is our inability in most cases to work together. Land readjustment entails a high level of coordination and cooperation, and I must admit that we do not do that very well, especially when we talk about our own assets. Nobody in the right mind, right, will want to share their land with other people, with the communities. But land readjustment is exactly the approach that requires people to do that in order to be successful. So that is the biggest challenge. How can we change people's mindset from a very self-centered approach into more of a community approach? Because, again, my thinking is that land value can only be created collectively. A landowner cannot create his or her assets all by herself and himself. It has to be done collectively in order to make his or her parcel of land worth something. So people have to understand that logic before we can actually implement land readjustment in a very effective and not time-consuming way. Experience has shown us that land readjustment is not a time-saving device. It takes a long time. It's just because of this particular aspect of human being that we are unwilling to work together, even knowingly that working together will be beneficial for everybody in the neighborhood. And that is the major challenge that we are facing, rather than all the technical aspect about how to subdivide the land and how to calculate land value. And those can be solved very easily. And the human side of the approach is something that we're still working on.
In our course, we looked at a lot of developing country cases where they have successfully applied this approach.
Right.
And in many of them were able to somehow overcome this challenge in a sense. So do you think that by sharing the other countries' experiences through learning, through this process of learning together on the subject, would that help our practitioners in developing countries?
That would definitely help. That is an indispensable part of the enterprise, to share successful experience, particularly how people actually turn around to know or to learn how to work together to make the land readjustment process work. But one thing that my experience had taught me is people tend to not so believe in other country experiences, because they would say, well, this is some country, it doesn't really us, so the contexts are different. That statement is somewhat correct, but at the same time, I think people need to understand that every case has its mirrors to inform the organizer of land readjustment or any project to be creative, to come up with idea of how to put the package together in a way that will work for the community. So I think, again, I agree with you that showing actual cases that have been successful in doing land readjustment lay the groundwork or provide the different elements for this kind of approach for country to pick and choose, and then assemble it together according to their own context to make it workable in their own countries. And I think the approach of accumulating more and more successful stories and cases is the very, very important step towards propagating or scaling up land readjustment at the global level.
Okay, thank you.
Very good.